A college professor goes to jail, becomes a lawyer, defames a retired police officer, becomes a free man only to go back to jail. This is Garudan. Let's talk about it. So this movie is directed by Arun Varma, the story is done by Jinesh M, and the first name I recognize on the sheet here is Jakes Bejoy. Now, Jakes Bejoy's music in this movie was fantastic. I really liked it. In fact, I'm starting to become a pretty big fan of Jakes Bejoy. He did the background score for Jana Gana Mana, he did the background score for King of Kotha, and while King of Kotha had many things about it, which you could talk about, the music, the score, how they set the atmosphere in that movie was fantastic, and you can say the same with Jana Gana Mana. He's done a lot more obviously, but he's a name that I'm starting to get familiar with and I'm really starting to appreciate his work. And his music was perfect in this movie because it just added to the atmosphere. The climax scenes where the music is building up, it is really well done, and it just adds to the fact that this movie is a technically very well done movie. It's so enjoyable in the way it's shot. You know, some of the editing techniques they've used and some of the close-ups versus the long shots that they've used, the settings in the nighttime at times, to create the claustrophobic feel at times within the room which Suresh Gopi's character is staying in. It's fantastic. It's actually phenomenal what they've done here with the cinematography, and the movie just looks cool. It looks like as soon as you start watching this movie, you know you're in for something really good because everything is on point. You know, I'm going to talk about the performances. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff in this breakdown, but I just want to give a quick mention before I get started and talk about Jakes Bejoy because, yeah, great music, and I'm looking forward to hearing more by him. The main thing that got me into this movie, personally for me, the main draw for me, because I'm not so familiar with Suresh Gopi yet. I'm not so familiar with a lot of the cast, to be honest. I didn't really recognize too many faces. But the one name that I did recognize and that really stuck out to me was Midhun Manuel Thomas. Now, Thomas is coming off the heels of another police procedural that he did all the way in 2020. So it's been 3 years since he's really done another movie. But man, was I happy to see him back here because I really enjoyed his 2020 blockbuster smash hit, Anjam Patira. I mean, that movie I have done a whole separate review for, and I can just speak about that movie again for so long, but it has a lot of similar traits from that movie to this movie in its writing. It's tightly packed, it's well done, it's engaging. You're basically hooked on the edge of your seat for basically the whole movie, I feel. There wasn't too many times where I was feeling bored. In fact, I started watching this movie pretty late in the night, and I ended up just watching it all the way through because I was enjoying it so much. So I'm a big fan of Midhun Manuel Thomas, really looking out for more of his work. But yeah, like Anjam Patira, this movie has a lot to like about it. So, just knowing that he wrote this movie, I was already excited to see what was in store. I'm going to talk about Suresh Gopi a little later, guys, so make sure you stick around to the end because I am going to talk about some of the performances throughout this. I am going to give you guys my final rating as well as some criticisms I had of this movie, but that's all going to come later. I'm going to start with the positives. And before I forget, a special mention to Pranav Prasad for bringing this to my attention. Thank you, mate. I appreciate you. So really, to get started with, this movie is a police procedural. A straightforward cop, Harish, and college professor, Nishant, get entangled in a dangerous crime. One must fight for his integrity, the other must fight for justice. Interesting. It's a really interesting premise, and to be honest, despite seeing I don't know how many police procedurals to date now, like there's a lot. It's a very common genre in not just Malayalam cinema, but it's very common in Hollywood as well. It's very common in the Tamil film industry. It's a cool genre, and the reason why it works is because it just keeps you on the edge of your seat and you keep guessing. What I liked about this one in particular is the fact that the crime happens and finishes, and 7 years later he comes out and then he tries to take revenge. And not revenge in a way that's like, he's not going to try and kill anybody. He's just trying to destroy somebody's career who's already retired. To be completely honest, it does start off a little bit slow. I think it starts off in a similar vein to how Anjam Patira started off, in that the first, 40 minutes or so is really an introduction to the characters, an introduction really to Suresh Gopi and how well established he is in the community. He's a respected police officer. He's retiring. He's got a son who wants to go overseas to learn how to be a chef. A son whose motives I questioned at times. So I think the son played a bit of a red herring for me, which I also absolutely loved. But I don't know if that was only me. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you guys thought the son was doing something dodgy in this as well. But it does set up the first half really well in that you don't really know the details of this crime too much. You're really just given hints. They never go into full detail about what actually happened. Why Nishant is the person that committed the crime. They really keep it brief. They don't show us much at all. Similarly, they don't really show us much of what he did in the prison either. What happened there, they showed us very few scenes. And I will say this movie, if you are going to go into this and you haven't watched it yet, it is definitely a movie that is driven by plot rather than character. So it's not a character study. It's not got a big theme to it. There's no big overlaying message. The overlaying message is crime is bad. That's basically it. But in terms of like the movie, it's very plot driven, which police procedurals mostly are. If you think of Anjam Patira, you think of Errata, that movie had a bit of more of a twist at the end. This movie also has a kind of twist, but not so much. But yeah, it is plot driven. So I think the first 45 minutes are important just to establish what's at stake. And that's what it does really well. But for me, the movie really takes over and starts to shine once Nishant comes back from prison. Then it just amps up to a whole new level. I would say about after the intermission at that time, this movie is just, you do not want to take your eyes off for a second because it is so much fun and the games that they're playing are fantastic. It's a bit of a cat and mouse game because we don't really know who is to blame here at this stage because it was so brief. However, we are on the side of Suresh Gopi, I would think, for most of the movie for Harish, because we want to see him succeed and we want to see him get that retribution and we just want to find out what happened here, basically. So there's a lot of intrigue in this movie. And I'll say the reason what really holds this movie together and makes it so good, aside from the writing, is the performances. Now, I've not seen too much of Biju Menon, but I'm not going to lie, he really impressed me in this movie, guys. I think he was so good in this movie and both of these characters played so well off each other. Suresh Gopi especially, what he did so well was I just think that his performance in the second half, where we're seeing this man deteriorate in front of our eyes, fantastic. Some of the scenes when he's drunk, because he's playing this really like hard-ass, straightforward cop, like no bullshit, no time for anything. He is getting straight to the point. He's about justice. He's a good man with a good family. He loves his dog, but he really just wants justice. That's what he's after. And he's never been wrong in his career or something along those lines. So he's a man of high integrity. And that's what this is all about. This Nishant comes in and he destroys his reputation completely, his integrity completely. It's so well done as to seeing this movie go all the way through and just to see his performance break down further and further and further. And on the other hand, Biju Menon does such a good job of playing this sort of, I guess, questionable character. Because while they don't give us too many hints during the movie, it's just interesting to see him sort of twist how his performance is in the jail. And once we find out towards the end in the climax scene what he's actually done. Fantastic. I think that is probably the shining moment of this movie, the performances of both these actors. And again, it was just so engaging and so much fun. I cannot recommend this anymore to anybody. Now, coming along to sort of some of the criticisms of this movie. Look, I like this movie quite a bit, so it's not too much I have a problem with. However, I did have some questions around, I guess, how well this movie did a job of actually letting us know how this all unfolded. I still have questions as to how this all worked because I don't know, while they showed us through a lot of expositions and flashbacks about, what Nishant has actually done and the character he was in the past, I feel like I didn't know how, Harish, Suresh Gopi's character actually got to know about all of this. They didn't show us that side of it, unless I missed it for some reason, but I don't think I did. So I didn't really see how he figured out all this stuff. Like it seemed like, they had caught him and they put the spies in, which was great. I love the whole concept about the eagles in the sky and they're everywhere. And I guess maybe that explains everything. I wish that was fleshed out a bit more. They had done it through basically just showing us, flashes of cops being everywhere, which I thought was very cool. But I just wish there was a bit more substance in the actual investigation part of it, because most of this movie, the investigation is just a red herring. It's just basically Harish trying to find out what's going on and being wrong most of the time, and then his reputation being further damaged, which looks like that's what Harish wants, but at the end of the day, it's all part of the plan and all part of the system, and the police always have each other's back. Awesome. Also, I have to say, regarding just one small positive in between here, some of the delivery and lines that Suresh Gopi had in this were fantastic. Once a cop, always a cop. I love that line. And he sort of said it and it came back around. Credit to the writing again from Midhun Manuel Thomas. It's just, he seems to close things off really well, so we don't just see things and they disappear. So that's probably my only major criticism of this movie. To be honest, I feel like the ending felt like it's a little bit... I feel like the ending could have just been a little bit better if they had explained a little bit more as to how, Harish got down to basically figuring out this crime. If that was there, this movie would have been just so good. But look, overall, I enjoyed this movie so much. It's the kind of movie that I think everybody should watch. A great movie to have towards the end of the year when, it's really a bit of a quiet time, I feel, for Malayalam cinema, until we have the other movies coming out later this year and obviously early next year. It feels a bit quiet. So this is a great movie. Now, to talk about my ratings for this movie, to close things off, look, I'll do my old IMDb comparison. So on IMDb, this movie has a 7.4 out of 10. Look, I'm probably a little bit higher. I might give this around an 8 out of 10 because I do like this genre. I did like the performances. It was great to see Suresh Gopi. It was great to see Biju Menon and also some of these other characters. I enjoyed Siddique's performance as the advocate, just playing, the number 2 to Suresh Gopi. And I also liked Jagadish's performance as Salam. He was also fantastic, and I'm enjoying seeing him in a more serious role. I had known him as more of a comedian, but it looks like ever since Rorschach, and maybe even before then, he seems to be taking more serious roles. And I always love when comedians go from a comedian to, something more serious. So, or even more negative sometimes. That's fantastic. Also, a short little cameo from Dileesh Pothan. I'm never going to complain when I see Dileesh Pothan. I think the guy's just, fantastic. And I love seeing him just wherever for however long it is. But so I'm probably a little bit higher on this movie. But guys, let me know in the comments what you thought about this movie. Let me know any trivia and I will talk to you guys in the next one.